Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. Former military head of state General Abdulsalami Abubakar asked political office seekers to put national interest ahead of personal interests. People's Democratic Party accuses the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, of endorsing bad governance by the ruling All Progressives Congress. At least 27 persons are feared killed in Kaduna State after armed bandits attacked Gwaska village. And the President of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, cautions U.S. President Donald Trump against withdrawing from the nuclear agreement. ChannelsTV.com has more information for you, and on youtube.com/channelsweb you can watch our videos. You can also watch us on your mobile device via your browser or download the Channels TV app for Android, Windows, iOS devices from their respective stores. Besides giving you access to news updates on the go, the Channels TV and Channels 24 apps have an Eyewitness feature that you can use to share pictures, videos or news of happenings around you. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the menu, and please follow the instructions. And to some of the pictures you sent into our Eyewitness portal, beginning with this one from Benin-Ore Expressway, showing these men of the Federal Road Safety Corps clearing tree branches that fell after a rainfall. According to our Eyewitness reporter, the men resorted to the clearance to ensure free traffic flow and prevent accident. Next is this image from Lekki showing children who created computer apps defending their project. Our Eyewitness reports that the project is sponsored by a tech firm that wants to encourage creativity in children. The Eyewitness is impressed by the efforts and is calling on other firms to toe the line. A final image is from Sholuyi Igbagada area of Lagos State, showing electricity poles that have fallen. Our Eyewitness reports that men of the Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company have been clearing them, but he is saying the amount of work done is just minimal compared to the damage. Thank you for sending them in and ask that you please keep them coming. President Muhammadu Buhari has boosted the fighting capabilities of the Nigerian Air Force with the inauguration of 2 Mi-35 combat helicopters in Kaduna State. The helicopter gunships, which were acquired from the Republic of Russia April this year, were officially launched on Saturday during the 54th anniversary celebration of the Nigerian Air Force. The Minister of Defense, Mansur Danali, who represented the President, says security cannot be guaranteed without adequate funding.
With the acquisition of these weapon platforms, there arose the need to train personnel to man and maintain the new aircraft types. In this regard, the Nigerian Air Force have within the last 2 years established and recruited over 5,000 personnel to adequately boost its human capacity and in line with the present administration efforts of creating jobs for our unemployment roots.
This administration has accorded high priority to the development of aircraft and armament engineering infrastructure and manpower to be at par with the internationally acclaimed standards. The central focus of this effort is human capacity development, which is geared to produce knowledgeable and skilled manpower that can respond effectively and efficiently in today's volatile, complex, and ambiguous security environment.
When President Muhammadu Buhari met with U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington last Monday, there were high expectations back home. Now that the president has returned, we examine the expected outcome of issues discussed at the meeting between the two leaders. In this next report, our correspondent Amarachi Ubani takes a look at the significance.
When President Muhammadu Buhari arrived at the White House for his meeting with President Donald Trump, Many hope the president would not betray Nigeria in light of appearing cap in hand, waiting for any handouts that may be given by the U.S. government.
We recognize the strong United States support in our fight against terrorism and also appreciated very much the United States agreement to sell 12 Super Tucano A-29 warplanes and weapons to Nigeria to effectively fight terrorism.
But to some analysts, the president could have focused on some other equally important areas instead of bringing up the regular.
One, the investment of the USA in Nigeria has been dwindling. Then they used to buy a lot of oil from us. These have also dwindled. We, in return, have not been able to really export much to the United States.
And if anyone was listening, President Trump made a request for Nigeria to provide level playing field for trade between both countries.
But we give Nigeria well over $1 billion in aid every year, and we have already started talking with the president about taking down the trade barriers.
Earlier this year, the U.S. Agency for International Development announced $89 million in additional development assistance to Nigeria to continue its support for development goals outlined in a Development Objectives Assistance Agreement between the U.S. and the Nigerian government, which was signed in 2015. A breakdown shows the monies would go to HIV/AIDS control through PREPFA, increase agricultural productivity and economic growth, strengthen education, support good governance, and improve water and sanitation infrastructure. When put together with all other funding from the U.S. government under a 5-year assistance agreement, it would amount to $808.5 million for Nigeria. Amarachi Ubani, Channels Television News.
Joining us now on the news at 10 to examine the expectations from the U.S. and Nigeria is Channels TV data analyst Babajide Gusowo. A pleasure to have you on the news at 10. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari is back from the U.S. Should we expect any new trade policy? I mean, for instance, do we still have bilateral trade advantage with the United States?
Yes, we could look at the bilateral trade advantage, but we've seen trade talks. We're discussing trade. We're about to discuss trade surplus. But there's one question on the lips of Nigerians, and that is, what does the president's visit to the United States really mean for them? In simple terms, what Nigerian youths are still trying to decide is which country is better, the United States of America or Nigeria? And there are two ways we could look at this. The first is we could look at what Bill Gates even mentioned, and that is the new advantage of nations is in the potential of their human resources. And so if we look at that as the basis to determine which country is better, the United States of Nigeria, we'll find out that the United States has, in terms of concentration of human capital, 33 persons per square kilometer. In Nigeria, we've got 212 persons per square kilometer. So in terms of looking at our potential as a nation, Nigeria's concentration of human capital per land area is much better than United States. But again, if we look at it from another perspective, which is the monetary terms, the budget, we've got an 8.7 trillion naira budget, Melinda, that has still not yet been passed. The United States has a 1 quadrillion naira budget. You heard that right. Approximately over 120 times the size of a budget. So if you're looking at, in the final analysis, the conclusion is, in terms of actuals, the United States is actually stronger. In terms of potential, Nigeria has the potential to be greater than it is currently. So
does the U.S. need Nigeria as much as Nigeria needs it?
Again, we could look at that from different perspectives. Let's look at migration, for instance, and why the United States, why Donald Trump, for instance, needs to ensure that he's very close to Nigeria and to President Buhari. In terms of migration, we've seen that there's a lot to do. Let's look at even imports. Within that 2003 to 2010 window, we had a lot of imports. Imports were in double digits. As at 2008, we were importing the US was importing $38 billion worth of goods from Nigeria. In simple terms, the United States was coming to Nigeria with trucks to buy from Nigeria, even though a lot of those goods were oil. Today, based on today's evidence, January to March this year, less than $2 billion. So just imagine that for one moment. In 2008, the United States was importing $38 billion worth of goods. This year, down to $7 billion. Last year, less than $7 billion. So indeed, we need the United States. In terms of migration, the United States needs us. And that's because in Africa, Nigeria has the most, among all other countries in Africa, Nigeria immigrants are the most in the United States. Over 300,000 migrants from Nigeria living in the United States, more than Ethiopia, more than Egypt. And so President Trump definitely understands the advantage he will get if these migrants are on his side, and also the advantage he will get as a global leader by working with Nigeria. But Nigeria also understands that a lot of the challenges we face, especially with the dollar, is because the United States isn't buying as much as it used to be, as much as they used to buy from us, compared to that 2003 to 2010 window when they were buying so much.
Well, even at that, some could argue that they're economic migrants.
Oh yes, they are economic migrants, and that is why those economic migrants are sending a lot of remittances to families, to you and I. So we're getting remittances of over $20 billion, Melinda, for migrants all around the world. And those are where Nigerians are very strong. So we've got Nigerians all around the country, all around the world, working very hard and ensuring that they are also very productive. But what we also need is for Nigerians to even work harder than they do work abroad to ensure that the nation is prosperous.
What do you think about thoughts that some analysts believe that we should look inwards rather than rely on foreign nations for infrastructure funding? Are we over-relying on the US for Nigeria's development?
And that is the challenge, Melinda. I do think the evidence also shows that we're over-relying on the US. And we're not getting as much as we should be getting. Look at the capital we've gotten from the US in the last 5 years. We're still yet to cross that $5 billion threshold. In 2014, we were getting $3.7 billion capital from the United States. Last year, we barely scratched $2.5 billion. So we can no longer rely on the United States. We need to look inward. We need to look at how we become more productive by prioritizing resources. We need to block those leakages and ensure that we use funds in the right places. And in the final analysis, Melinda, we should remember that which country, if you are asked that, would you rather hold the passport of the US or will you rather hold the Nigerian passport? And you don't have to answer that. Or whatever answer you give me, you need to ask yourself the second question, and that is, does your answer contradict your recital of the Nigerians' national pledge?
Pledge, not the anthem now.
No, the pledge. And that is the challenge. We have a lot of young Nigerians that will prefer to hold the passport of the United States, even though they pledge to Nigeria, their country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest. And so we need to encourage Nigerians to look more inward. We need to encourage younger Nigerians to ensure that they are more productive and don't just rely on the government. Because at the end of the day, it is our country, and it is not the country of Donald Trump.
Something we'll argue about right after the program.
Oh, surely.
But thank you so much for
coming. But also remember about the pledge.
All right. And when the News at 10 returns, our community report tonight showcases Gurasa, a delicacy as well as a source of income for residents of Dala community. Please join us again.